When struggling artist Amelia's dreams shattered in New York, she never expected a stormy night at a luxury Colorado resort would change her life forever. One moment she's falling, the next, she's caught in the arms of mysterious tech mogul Jonathan Rivers, but their instant connection hides a web of betrayal that runs deeper than either could imagine. Greetings, fellow dreamers. This tale is filled with love, secrets, and a twist you'll never forget. Come along as we uncover it. The mountain air tasted of rain and broken dreams as Amelia rose. Harper pressed her forehead against the cold window of the Cascade Mountain Lodge. 3 days since her art exhibition had crumbled in New York. 3 days since the critics had torn her work apart with surgical precision. She still felt the sting of their words carved into her chest. The luxury resort stretched below her suite like a fairy tale she couldn't afford. Every breath she took here cost money she didn't have, but self-destruction had never looked so beautiful. Stone walls and timber beams framed her view of the Rocky Mountains, where storm clouds gathered like her mother's disapproval. Thunder rolled across the valley as Amelia made her way to the dining room, her stomach hollow from forgetting to eat. The space was nearly empty, guests having fled to their rooms as the storm approached. She chose a corner table where shadows could hide the tear tracks on her cheeks. Across the room sat a man who looked as haunted as she felt. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his jaw was set in a hard line that spoke of recent betrayal. Designer clothes couldn't disguise the weight he carried in his shoulders, the way his fingers drummed against the table like he was fighting invisible demons. When he looked up, their eyes met for a heartbeat before both looked away. Jonathan. Blake Rivers had built an empire from code and ambition. But tonight he felt like a king whose closest knight had driven a sword through his back. His business partner's attempted hostile takeover still burned in his memory. The legal papers scattered across his penthouse floor 3 states away. The mountains had seemed like the perfect place to disappear, to figure out who he could trust. When trust itself felt like a luxury he couldn't afford, the storm hit with the force of nature's fury. Lightning split the sky as thunder shook the windows. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting bathed the dining room in amber shadows that made everything feel suspended between reality and dream. Amelia stood to get a better view of the storm's raw power, but another crack of thunder startled her backward. She stumbled directly into the path of the mysterious stranger who had risen at the same moment. Time slowed as she fell. Strong arms caught her before she could hit the ground, pulling her against a chest that smelled of cedar and expensive cologne. For a moment they stayed frozen, her palms pressed against the soft fabric of his sweater, his arms wrapped around her waist like he'd been waiting his whole life to catch someone falling. In the flickering emergency light, their eyes met again. "I've got you," he said, his voice rough like whiskey over gravel. Something electric passed between them that had nothing to do with the lightning outside. Amelia felt her carefully constructed walls trembling, while Jonathan found himself wanting to protect this beautiful stranger from whatever had put that pain in her green eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, making no move to step away from the safety of his arms. They separated slowly as hotel staff appeared with flashlights, but the connection remained taut between them like a wire humming with current. Grace Montenegro. The general manager emerged to organize the chaos with practiced efficiency. "The storm has knocked out power to the entire valley," Grace announced. "We'll be serving refreshments in the lobby lounge until power is restored." Jonathan found himself walking beside the auburn-haired woman, neither willing to break whatever spell had been cast in that moment of collision. In the lobby, candles and lanterns transformed the space into something magical, a place where normal rules didn't apply. "Jonathan," he said as they settled near the massive stone fireplace. "Amelia." She accepted the wine he offered, her fingers brushing his. "Are you here alone?" "Very much alone." The honesty surprised him. "Running away from people I trusted who turned out to be liars?" She studied his face in the firelight. "What kind of lies? The kind that steal everything you've built and call it business?" Jonathan's jaw tightened. "What about you? What are you running from?" Amelia took a sip of wine, feeling it warm her from the inside. "The kind of failure that makes you question if you ever had any talent at all. I'm an artist. Was an artist. Now I'm just someone who wasted her life savings on a dream that wasn't worth the canvas it was painted on." Outside, the storm raged, with increasing intensity, but inside the lodge felt like a cocoon where two wounded souls had found each other in the darkness. "Show me," Jonathan said suddenly, his dark eyes intense in the firelight. "Show you what?" "Art. I wanted to see what the critics were too blind to appreciate." Amelia felt her heart skip. "I don't have anything with me. I left it all behind." Jonathan leaned forward, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Then tell me about it. Make me see it." His lightning illuminated there. Faces through the tall windows, Amelia began to speak. She described paintings that captured the loneliness of city lights reflected in rain puddles. Portraits that revealed the secret sorrows people carried behind their smiles. With each word, she felt something inside her chest beginning to unfurl, like a flower that had been waiting for the right light. Jonathan listened with an intensity that made her feel seen for the first time in months. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "They were fools," he said finally, his voice low and fierce. "Anyone who couldn't see the beauty in what you've described doesn't deserve to call themselves a critic." The sincerity in his voice hit her like a physical blow. "You don't even know me. I know enough." His hand moved across the space between them, hovering inches from hers on the armrest. "Ah, I know someone broke your heart, and I know you're stronger than you think you are." Thunder crashed overhead, and in that moment of sound and fury, Amelia made a decision that terrified her. "What if I'm not?" She whispered, "What if I'm just someone who dreams too big and falls too hard?" Jonathan's fingers finally closed over hers, warm and steady and real. "Then we'll fall together," he said. And the promise in his voice made her believe that maybe, just maybe, falling didn't always have to mean hitting the ground. Dawn broke over the mountains like a promise, whispered in gold and pink. Amelia barely noticed the beauty outside her suite's windows. She'd spent the night replaying every moment with Jonathan. The way his voice had wrapped around her like velvet. The way his eyes had seen through her defenses to the broken artist underneath. Her phone buzzed with another message from her landlord, followed by 3 missed calls from her gallery representative. Reality was calling, but for the first time in months she didn't want to answer. A soft knock interrupted her brooding. When she opened the door, Jonathan stood in the hallway holding 2 cups of coffee, his hair damp from a shower, and his eyes bright despite the early hour. "Good morning," he said, offering her one of the cups. "I thought you might need this." The simple gesture hit her harder than any grand romantic display could have. When was the last time someone had thought about what she might need? "Thank you." She accepted the coffee, inhaling the rich aroma. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not much. I kept thinking about what you said last night about your paintings." He stepped into the suite without invitation, moving to the wall of windows that framed the valley below. "I have a confession to make." Amelia's stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought. The part where the fairy tale crumbles. "I looked you up online," Jonathan continued, turning to face her. "Amelia Rose Harper, graduate of the Art Institute of Chicago, featured in 3 group shows before your solo exhibition. The critics who panned your work are idiots with no vision." Relief and vulnerability warred in her chest. "You researched." "Me. I research everyone." His admission was matter of fact, but something flickered in his eyes. It's a habit when you've been burned as many times as I have. She set down her coffee cup, studying his face. "What exactly do you do, Jonathan? Don't say consulting or finance. Those are the answers men give when they don't want to explain why they can afford to stay at places like this on a whim." For a moment, she thought he might deflect again. Instead, he moved to the window, placing his palm against the glass. "I built software that most of the world uses without knowing it. Security protocols, data encryption, things that keep people's digital lives safe." His reflection looked tired in the morning light. "I started in my dorm room at MIT and built it into something worth more money than I know what to do with. Someone tried to take it away from you. My business partner. My best friend since college." Jonathan's voice carried the weight of betrayal. "Marcus filed papers to dissolve our partnership and seize control of the company while I was in negotiations with a major client. He thought I'd be too distracted to notice until it was too late." Amelia moved to stand beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "But you weren't too distracted." "No, I've learned to see betrayal coming from a mile away. He turned to look at her, and she saw something raw and unguarded in his expression, except with you. You blindsided me completely, her breath caught. Jonathan, I know we just met. I know this is crazy. His hand rose to touch her face, thumb tracing along her cheekbone. But I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me last night. Like you could see straight through to who I really am underneath all the money and paranoia. The honesty in his voice made her want to run and stay in equal measure. Maybe. I see you clearly because I'm just as broken as you are. Maybe that's exactly what we both need. His lips were a breath away from hers when her phone rang, the shrill sound shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen, and her blood ran cold. I have to take this, she said, stepping away from him. Hello, Marcus. Jonathan went very still. At the name, Amelia, thank God, came the voice from her phone. I've been trying to reach you for days. I have incredible news about your exhibition, Marcus Westfield. Jonathan's voice was deadly quiet. Amelia felt the world tilt on its axis. She looked between the phone and Jonathan's suddenly pale face. You know each other? Know each other? Jonathan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marcus Westfield is my business partner, the one who tried to destroy everything I built. The phone slipped from Amelia's suddenly numb fingers, clattering to the floor as Marcus's voice continued talking about gallery connections and second chances, oblivious to the bomb he'd just detonated. This isn't possible, Amelia whispered. Do you know him? Jonathan's voice had gone ice cold, the warmth from moments before completely gone. He's my gallery representative. He's been helping me for months, trying to get my work noticed. Her mind raced through every conversation, every meeting, every promise Marcus had made. He said he believed in my talent. Jonathan's expression hardened into something she didn't recognize. Marcus doesn't believe in anything except what benefits Marcus. How much money did you give him? What? For the exhibition? How much did? You pay him to set it up? The question hit like a slap. I didn't pay him, he said. Gallery representatives work on commission, that he'd only make money if I succeeded. Amelia. Jonathan's voice was gentler now, but she could see the pity creeping into his eyes. Marcus Westfield hasn't worked in the art world in 5 years. He's been my business partner since we graduated from MIT. The suite suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Amelia sank onto the edge of the bed as the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. He was never helping me, she said, the words feeling like glass in her throat. The exhibition, the connections, all of it was fake. Why would he do that to you? How did you even meet him? Amelia closed her eyes, remembering that day 6 months ago when Marcus had approached her at a coffee shop near her studio, praising her sketches, offering hope when she had none left. I don't know, she whispered. Lying to me about everything, if he's been using me somehow. She looked up at him, fear and realization warring in her green eyes. What if me being here with you isn't the coincidence we thought it was? The question hung between them like a loaded gun as Jonathan's phone began to ring. He glanced at the screen, and his face went white. It's Marcus, he said. Outside, storm clouds were gathering again, darker than before. But the real storm was just beginning to break inside the luxury suite, where two people who had found hope in each other were about to discover that even their meeting might have been part of someone else's game. Jonathan's finger hovered over the answer button as Amelia's world crumbled around her for the second time in a week. Answer it, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. I think it's time we both heard what Marcus Westfield really wants. Jonathan answered the call on speaker, his dark eyes never leaving Amelia's face as Marcus's smooth voice filled the suite. Jonathan, my old friend, I was wondering when you'd surface. Cut the games, Marcus. What do you want? Low chuckle came. Through the phone, straight to business as always. I have to admit I'm impressed. When I heard you'd fled to some mountain hideaway, I thought you'd finally cracked under the pressure. Amelia felt sick as the pieces clicked into place. She grabbed Jonathan's arm, mouthing the word how. He shook his head, his jaw set in a hard line. "You're tracking me?" Jonathan said. "Of course I'm tracking you. But did you really think you could disappear without me knowing where you went?" Marcus's voice carried that familiar tone of condescension that Amelia now recognized with crystal clarity. "The question is, what are you doing with my little artist protege?" The words hit Amelia like a physical blow. She sank into the chair. By the window, her hands shaking as the full scope of Marcus's manipulation became clear. "Ish. She's not your anything," Jonathan snarled. "Oh, but she is." Amelia Rose Harper, 27 years old, orphaned at 16, worked 3 jobs to put herself through art school. Dreams of making it as a painter, but lacks the connections to break into the New York scene. Marcus's voice turned sickeningly sweet. "Hello, darling. I hope you're listening." "I'm here," Amelia managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good. I'd hate for you to miss this conversation. You see, Jonathan, our dear Amelia has been incredibly useful to me over the past 6 months. Not for her art, though I must say she does have a certain raw talent that could be developed with proper guidance." Jonathan moved to stand behind Amelia's chair, his hands resting protectively on her shoulders. "What did you do to her? Nothing she didn't agree to?" "I simply offered her what every struggling artist wants: hope. A chance to be discovered. A gallery exhibition that would change her life." Marcus paused, savoring the moment. What she didn't know was that every penny she spent on that exhibition went directly into funding my legal case against you. Room went silent, except for the sound of Amelia's sharp intake of breath. "You used her money to try to steal my company," Jonathan said, his voice deadly quiet. "I used her desperation to fund what should have been mine from the beginning. Do you have any idea how humiliating it's been to watch you get all the credit for innovations that were as much mine as yours? To see you faded as some tech genius while I remained in the background?" Amelia felt tears burning her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, hot and pure and clarifying. "The exhibition was never real," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "The critics who reviewed my work, paid actors. Very good ones, I thought. Their reviews were quite convincing in their cruelty." Jonathan's hands tightened on her shoulders as she began to tremble with fury. "The other artists in the group shows the gallery connections, all of it. All carefully constructed to make you believe you had a chance. To keep you hopeful enough to keep investing money you didn't have." Marcus's voice carried a note of pride. "You were so eager to believe, Amelia. It made you remarkably easy, too. Manipulate, you bastard." The words came out of Amelia like a growl. "You destroyed my life for money. I gave your pathetic little life meaning. Before me, you were just another failed artist, waiting tables and painting in a studio apartment that smelled like turpentine and desperation. I made you part of something bigger." Jonathan stepped around the chair, pulling Amelia to her feet and into his arms. "You're done using her?" "Am I? Because I don't think you understand the situation you're in, old friend." Marcus's voice turned, cold and calculating. "See, I know exactly where you are because I arranged for Amelia to be there." The words hung in the air like poison gas. "What?" Amelia pulled back to look at Jonathan's face. "The spontaneous trip to Colorado, the last-minute flight, the rental car that just happened to lead you to the exact resort where Jonathan was hiding. Did you really think that was all coincidence?" Amelia's world crumbled for the 3rd time in a week. "I've been tracking Jonathan's movements since he disappeared. When I discovered he was at the Cascade Mountain Lodge, I simply made sure you'd end up there too. A few strategic suggestions about needing to get away, some carefully planted travel, advertisements, and voila. 2 broken people find each other in a storm." Jonathan's arms tightened around her as she began to shake. "Even this," she whispered. "Even us. Especially you two. I knew if I could get you together, Jonathan would do exactly what he's doing right now. Fall for the wounded artist and try to play hero. It makes you predictable, Jonathan. And predictable men make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" Jonathan's voice was ice, the kind where you wired $2 million to an offshore account to save the woman you've known for less than 48 hours. Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Simple, darling. Jonathan is going to transfer $2 million to me, or I'm going to release some very interesting financial information about your art career to the IRS, information that shows you've been evading taxes on income from art sales that never actually happened. It's amazing what a good accountant can make look real on paper. She never sold anything. You just said the exhibition was fake. But the paperwork isn't fake, Jonathan. Contracts, the invoices, the tax forms, showing significant art income. That was never reported. Amelia could face serious federal charges, prison time even. The suite felt like it was spinning around them as Amelia realized the true scope of the trap they'd walked into. You want me to pay you $2 million to make fake tax problems disappear? Jonathan asked. I want you to pay me what you owe me for years of partnership, and I want you to sign the dissolution papers that give me 51% control of our company. Consider the $2 million a signing bonus, and if I don't, Marcos's laugh was cold and sharp, then the woman you're holding faces federal prosecution. And I release the photos I have of you two together to every business publication in the country. Tech billionaires' mountain romance should make excellent headlines. Just as the board is deciding whether to approve the Morrison merger, Amelia looked up at Jonathan's face and saw something shift in his expression, something that looked like resignation mixed with calculation. You have until midnight tomorrow to decide, Marcus continued. Wire the money and sign the papers, or watch both your worlds burn. Oh, and Jonathan, don't try to run again. I'll find you wherever you go. The line went dead, leaving them standing in the silence of the suite as afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, mocking them with its beauty. He's going to destroy both of us, Amelia whispered. Jonathan cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. No, he said, his voice carrying a note of steel she hadn't heard before. He's going to try. But Marcus made one crucial mistake. What? Jonathan's smile was sharp and dangerous. He taught me never to trust anyone, which means I've spent the last 10 years making sure I always have a backup plan. Outside, clouds were gathering for another storm, but inside the suite, Jonathan Blake Rivers was about to show Marcus Westfield what happened when you tried to destroy the people he cared about. The war room. Jonathan created in Amelia's suite. Looked nothing like the romantic retreat it had been hours before. His laptop was surrounded by legal documents, financial records, and 3 phones that hadn't stopped ringing since he'd made his first call to his legal team. Ruby found the shell companies, he said, hanging up from his latest conversation. Marcus has been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months. It's building a case that makes it look like I was the one stealing from the partnership. Amelia sat, curled in the window seat, watching him work with the single-minded intensity of a man going to war. In the past 6 hours, she'd seen him transform from the vulnerable stranger who'd caught her when she fell into something harder, more dangerous. This was the tech mogul who'd built an empire, and she was getting a front-row seat to what that actually meant. Can you prove it? She asked. I can prove everything. Marcus is brilliant, but he's also arrogant. He left digital fingerprints all over his schemes. Jonathan looked up from his laptop, his dark eyes unreadable, including the fake documentation he created about your art sales. Relief flooded through her. So you can make it all go away? I can make the tax fraud charges disappear, yes. Amelia, there's something else. He closed the laptop slowly, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. Ruby found records of payments Marcus made to you over the past 6 months. Small amounts, never more than a few $100s. At a time, what payments? He never paid me anything. Coffee shop encounters where he picked up the check. Gallery submission fees he said he'd cover. Art supplies that showed up at your studio with notes saying they were from anonymous benefactors. Jonathan's voice was careful, controlled. Your rent? Someone's been making partial payments to your landlord for the past 4 months. The world tilted around her as the implications sank in. He was supporting me financially without me knowing it. Which means in the eyes of the law, you accepted compensation for services rendered. It changes your legal standing completely, Amelia. Felt sick. What kind of services? I never did anything for him except paint. Jonathan was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the desk in that nervous gesture she'd come to recognize. When he looked at her again, She saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. "Amelia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." "Of course. Did Marcus ever ask you to do anything besides paint? Run any errands? Deliver any messages? Meet with anyone on his behalf?" She started to shake her head, then stopped as a memory surfaced. "There was one thing. About 2 months ago, he asked me to drop off some papers at an office building downtown. Said it was a lease agreement for a new gallery space that he was too busy to deliver it himself." Jonathan's expression went completely still. "What kind of papers?" "I don't know. They were in a sealed envelope. I just handed them to the receptionist at Blake Westfield Technologies and left." The silence that followed was deafening. "You delivered papers to my company," Jonathan said finally. "I didn't know it was your company." "The name meant nothing to me then." She stood up, moving toward him. "Jonathan, what were in those papers?" He turned his laptop screen toward her, showing a legal document with her signature at the bottom. "A sworn affidavit stating that you witnessed me accepting bribes from potential clients. It's dated the day you delivered the envelope." Amelia stared at the screen in horror. "That's not my signature." "No, but it's a very good forgery. It was filed with the SEC as part of Marcus's evidence that I was engaging in unethical business practices. He used me to forge evidence against you." The words came out as a whisper. "Even before he got us together at the lodge, he was using me to destroy you." Jonathan closed the laptop and stood, moving to the window where the late afternoon light cast long shadows across the mountains. "The question is, what do we do now?" "We expose him. We go to the authorities with everything you've found. We could do that." His voice was strangely flat. "But Marcus was right about one thing. Morrison merger is being voted on next week. If any of this becomes public before then, if there's even a hint of scandal or instability in the company, the deal falls apart. So, let it fall apart." Jonathan turned to look at her, and she saw something in his expression that made her take a step back. "The Morrison merger isn't just about money, Amelia. Morrison Technologies has contracts with the Department of Defense, with hospitals, with infrastructure companies. If this deal doesn't go through, if Marcus gains control of the company, he'll have access to security protocols that protect millions of people." The weight of what he was saying settled over her, like a blanket of ice. "You're talking about national security." "I'm talking about the difference between keeping dangerous technology out of the wrong hands and letting Marcus sell it to whoever pays the most." "What are you saying?" Jonathan moved to the desk, picking up a legal document she hadn't seen before. "I'm saying I've already signed the dissolution papers. I'm giving Marcus control of the company." "What?" The word came out as a shout. "Jonathan, no. It's the only way to protect you and stop him from doing something catastrophic with the technology. Don't you dare." She grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "Don't you dare sacrifice yourself for me. Not when I'm the one who helped him hurt you, even if I didn't know I was doing it." "Amelia. No, I won't let you destroy everything you've built because Marcus manipulated me into being his weapon against you." Jonathan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "You weren't a weapon, you were a victim. I'll be damned if I let him hurt you any more than he already has. And I'll be damned if I let you throw away your life's work for someone you've known for 2 days. It's not just 2 days." His voice was raw with emotion. "Feels like I've been waiting for you my whole life. Like every betrayal, every disappointment was just preparing me to recognize something real when I found it." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she realized what he was planning to do. "You're going to wire him the money too, aren't you? Even though you're giving him the company? $2 million is nothing compared to what the company is worth. It's insurance to make sure he leaves you alone forever." "Jonathan, please." Her voice broke on his name. "There has to be another way." "There is." He pulled out his phone, showing her a number on the screen. "I call the FBI, we expose everything, and let the chips fall where they may. But that means you face federal charges, the Morrison deal dies, and Marcus disappears with enough classified technology to sell to foreign governments. Then we find a third option. There isn't one. I've been over this with my legal team for hours. Either I sacrifice the company and $2 million to protect you and national security, or I sacrifice you to protect the company and hope the FBI can catch Marcus before he does too much damage. The phone in his hand began to ring, Marcus's name appearing on the screen. "It's him," Jonathan said. "He wants an answer." Amelia looked at the phone, then at Jonathan's face, and made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "Don't answer it," she said. "I have a better idea, Amelia. Trust me, the way you trusted me when you caught me falling." She moved to her purse, pulling out her own phone. "Marcus made one mistake when he taught you never to trust anyone." That. Her smile was sharp and dangerous as she began dialing a number from memory. He forgot that sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy gives you themselves. The phone rang once, twice, then Marcus's familiar voice answered. "Amelia, darling. Amelia's voice was honey over broken glass as she put the phone on speaker. "I have a proposition for you." Jonathan watched her with growing fascination and terror as she transformed before his eyes into something he'd never seen before. The vulnerable artist was still there, but underneath was steel tempered by betrayal and sharpened by fury.
Ow.
"Delightful," Marcus purred. "I do love it when my protégés show initiative. I want to make a deal. Just you and me, no Jonathan involved." "Amelia, what are you doing?" Jonathan moved toward her, but she held up a hand to stop him. "I'm listening," Marcus said. "You want to destroy Jonathan's company and reputation? I want my life back, and enough money to disappear somewhere you'll never find me." She met Jonathan's eyes, and he saw something in her green gaze that made his breath catch. "I have something you need more than his signature on dissolution papers." "What could you possibly have that I need?" Amelia smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Evidence that you've been embezzling from Blake Westfield? Technologies for over 2 years. Financial records, email communications, digital receipts for every shell company you've created." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for heartbeats. "You're bluffing," Marcus said finally, but his voice had lost its certainty. Tell me, when you hired me to deliver those papers to your company, did you really think I was stupid enough not to make copies? I'm an artist, Marcus. I notice details. I remember the names on the doors I passed, the conversations I overheard, the financial documents that were left open on desks. Jonathan stared at her in amazement as the pieces clicked into place. She was lying, but she was doing it with such conviction that even he was starting to believe her. "You're lying," Marcus said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "The shell company in the Cayman Islands registered under your college roommate's name. The fake consulting contracts with companies that don't exist. The systematic transfer of research and development funds into your personal accounts." Amelia's voice was steady as carved stone. "Shall I go on? Even if you had such evidence, which you don't, what makes you think I'd negotiate with you? Because if you don't, I go to the FBI tomorrow morning, not with Jonathan, but by myself, as a concerned whistleblower who discovered financial irregularities while doing freelance work for Blake Westfield." She paused, letting that sink in. "I'm not a tech mogul with $1 billion company to protect. I'm just a broke artist who stumbled onto evidence of corporate fraud. The media will eat it up."
Jonathan watched Marcus's carefully constructed
plan crumble in real time as Amelia turned his own manipulation tactics against him. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. $5 million wired to an account I'll specify. A signed confession that you fabricated the tax fraud charges against me. I'm a guarantee that you disappear from both our lives forever. $5 million? You're insane. I'm broke, Marcus. There's a difference. Amelia's laugh was cold and bitter. You stole my dreams, my money, my hope. You used me as a weapon against an innocent man. $5 million is a bargain for what you put me through, and if I refuse, then tomorrow morning, the FBI gets copies of everything I have, along with a detailed statement about how you recruited me, manipulated me, and used me to commit fraud against your business partner. She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried more threat than any shout could have. Maybe broke, Marcus, but I'm not powerless. And I'm certainly not as naive as I was 6 months ago. The silence stretched until Jonathan wondered if Marcus had hung up. You have 12 hours, Marcus said finally. If I don't receive confirmation of the wire transfer by dawn, I release everything I have on both of you. No. Amelia's voice was iron. You have until I finish this conversation to agree to my terms, or I hang up and make my call to the FBI. I'm done being your victim, Marcus. Choose now. Another long pause. Then, fine, 5 million. But I want the evidence destroyed. The evidence gets destroyed when Jonathan's company is safe. When the charges against me are dropped, and when you're on a plane to a country with no extradition treaty, not before. Deal. The line went dead, and Amelia sank onto the bed, her entire body shaking as the adrenaline began to fade. Jonathan moved to sit beside her, pulling her into his arms. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, or the most reckless. Probably both. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Jonathan, I don't actually have any evidence. I was bluffing the entire time, I know. His smile was soft and proud and full of wonder. That's what made it so brilliant. Marcus is so paranoid about his own schemes that he assumed you must have discovered something real. But what happens when he realizes I was lying? When there's no evidence to destroy? Jonathan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. By then it won't matter. While you were playing him, my legal team was recording every word of this conversation. We have him confessing to fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Marcus just handed us everything we need to destroy him. It's over, it's over. He pressed his forehead against hers. You saved my company. You saved yourself, and you probably saved national security in the process. We saved each other. She smiled through her tears. Though I have to ask, what happens now? Marcus will wire the money, but I can't keep it. Actually, you can. Consider it compensation for pain and suffering, plus interest on the money he stole from you for the fake exhibition. Jonathan's expression grew serious. But more importantly, what happens now is up to you. U.S. If you want there to be an us. Looked into his dark eyes, seeing the vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. I want to paint you, she said softly. What?
Paint.
I want to paint your portrait. Not because someone commissioned it, or because I think it will sell, but because I want to capture the way you looked at me in that storm, like I was worth saving. Jonathan's breath caught. Amelia, I want to paint you, and then I want to show you the real New York art scene, not the fake world Marcus created for me, but the actual galleries and artists and critics who matter. She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. I want to see what happens when someone with your resources and my talent work together. As partners, not as victim and savior. Partners, he repeated, and the word sounded like a promise. Partners. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of possibility. Though I should probably warn you, I'm done being naive, Marcus may have taught me to be suspicious of everyone's motives. Jonathan laughed, the sound rich and genuine in the quiet sweet. Good. Suspicious looks beautiful on you. Outside, the sun was setting over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that no artist could ever fully capture. But inside the suite, as Amelia Rose Harper began planning her first real art exhibition with the support of a man who saw her talent for what it truly was, the future looked brighter than any sunset. 6 months later, the art critics of New York would struggle to find words adequate to describe her work. Kay would write about her emotional landscapes and intimate portraits with the kind of reverence usually reserved for the masters. But they would never know that her greatest masterpiece was the portrait that hung in the penthouse apartment she shared with Jonathan Blake Rivers. The painting that captured the exact moment a woman learned to trust again, and a man discovered that some things were worth more than all the money in the world. Marcus Westfield, meanwhile, would spend his days in a minimum security federal prison. Serving a sentence for corporate fraud and conspiracy, he would have plenty of time to reflect on the lesson Amelia had taught him, that underestimating the strength of broken people was the most dangerous mistake he could ever make. And sometimes late at night in their shared home overlooking Central Park, Jonathan would catch Amelia painting by moonlight, her face serene with the kind of peace that comes from knowing you've survived the worst betrayal possible and found something real on the other side. She would look up at him and smile, and he would remember the way she'd felt in his arms during that first storm, the way she'd looked at him like he was worth saving too. Some love stories begin with lightning and end with thunder. Theirs began with a fall and ended with the quiet certainty that sometimes the most beautiful art comes from learning to trust someone enough to let them catch you. The end.